to the program. I'm Chris Stafford. My guest today is Jessika Kynett, who has overcome a traumatic brain injury and will be competing in what she refers to as her Olympic Games when she takes part in the American Eventing Championships next week. And on this episode of The Horse Show, I'm delighted to welcome our new partner here at Wisp Sports, Team Ride Safe. And joining me is Dr. Stephanie Davis, who founded the company and is building out a product that is essential for all women in sport, no matter what your sport is. But today we're going to talk about how it applies to anyone who rides a horse. Stephanie, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how did this product come about then, and why did you feel it was an essential product for riders as well as anyone, really, whether they're in sports or not?
Well, I've been an eventer kind of my whole life, and so, not that safety isn't a prominent part of all horse sports, but particularly in eventing in the cross-country phase, we've always had to wear this medical armband, which is, plastic and somewhat uncomfortable, and I just found a need, that there was a need for something different. We've progressed in safety in helmet design, vests, and now air vests, and yet we're still wearing a piece of plastic on our arm. So in my mind, I just had to find an easier way and something that people would wear all the time. No one goes on a training ride at home and wears their armband. So even at home, we're not really, being as safe as we possibly can. So that's kind of where it all kind of started, was that just need for safety and medical information to be a bit easier. And then on top of that, more fashionable, because certainly, plastic is not all that cool. So, and that's something that I want to expand through all horse sports, because no matter what you're doing, you don't have to go cross country to get hurt. And there's lots of stories that people have had or experienced that would tell you that. So that was kind of the impetus for me to develop this product.
And explain how it works. You said it's plastic, it's an armband, and there are lots of choices in terms of design, so you can be quite fashionable with these too. There's bling for those that like bling, and there are a variety of colours as well, and it's an interchangeable armband. But tell us how it works, Stephanie. What is the essential information, and how you make it universal, as you have done?
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely have spent a lot of time on the fashion aspect, because if you don't like what it looks like, you're not going to wear it, and then it certainly can't help you no matter how efficient it is. So the bands are made of medical-grade silicone, and I have probably, I think, about 26 different colors. There's also a leather band and a metal band, and like you said, I do Swarovski crystal by hand, however you want it. So my goal is to design it in a unique way for each individual, so they feel that it's their own custom piece of jewelry more so than a medical bracelet. So the way the bracelet itself works is on the faceplate, there's a small metal faceplate that has your pertinent information engraved on it. It will include your name, and I always recommend at least one emergency contact. And after that, some people put sayings or medical history that's really important, allergies or metal in your body, whatever you feel that needs to be known immediately in case of an emergency. And then the secondary level of the way that it works is on everybody's plate is our website. And on the back of that plate, everyone has their own unique ID number. So in case of emergency, anyone that's around you that has a cell phone, which nowadays is just about everyone, can get online, go to our website, and the first thing you see on the website is a big red box that says first responder and then bracelet ID. So you will type in that person's ID, click access, and then their medical profile will come up. So in a matter of seconds, you can know all their medical history, if there are other emergency contacts, who their doctor is, where they're from, whatever you need to know to get them the medical attention as quickly as possible.
So it is immediate, and it is there for first responders, and you also have a way of, on the bracelet, of stating really who, not only who the emergency contact person is, Stephanie, but the relationship with them too. So you don't, so family members don't have that awful call when someone's had an accident. You've thought about that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I try and make everything up to the wearer. So everything is custom. Even the medical profile, that's something that you will enter yourself. So if, let's say, you're very nervous about your secure information, because in all fairness, if you lost your bracelet, someone could type in that number, right, and look up information. So you have to decide what you really want people to know in an emergency. And when you get your bracelet, you'll be able to log in and you can see the medical questionnaire. You can fill in as much or as little as you want. So everything is meant to be customized. You can say your whole life history, which some people do, or just very few important details. And on the plate itself, you can say the number is for your mom or your spouse or whomever, so that people know who they're calling and kind of how to approach the conversation depending on how serious the emergency is.
So essential first information for emergency care. And in terms of the products, as you said, you've got a tremendous range of products of the product and color and choices, and you can customize it and you can interchange the armbands and everything. So tell us, what about the price range though, Stephanie? What do people need to know and how do they find out more information and place an order?
Sure. So the basic bracelet, which is the whole package, basically you get the faceplate, the band, and the clasp that puts it all together, as well as the first year's membership. And that's $40. And there is an annual fee, which I personally, as a consumer, I don't like annual or monthly fees, which is why I made it extremely small just to help me manage my website. It's $5 a year. That's it. And you can pay for 5 years in advance if you'd like to, so you don't have to think about it. I've had a lot of people do that. I even did that for myself, to be quite honest. And so then you're good to go for 5 or 10 years. So that's something that myself as a consumer I don't like, so I wanted to make that very simple and low cost. You can absolutely go crazy and make it more expensive, as much crystals as you put on it. I've certainly had people pay over $100 for a bracelet, but I wanted it to be very affordable, so cost isn't an issue. And especially in the horse industry, that's probably the cheapest thing you're going to have on you. You know, the animal you're sitting on, the tack that they're wearing, the clothes that you're wearing, the helmet you're wearing are all much, much more expensive than your medical ID bracelet. And that's kind of really that, well, it's only $40. It's very simple and makes perfect sense.
It certainly does, and we should point out that whilst we're addressing riders here, anyone in the horse world, it doesn't matter what your discipline, this is for you, but it's also for other sports, and you are branching out into other sports, Stephanie, aren't you? Because it really does apply to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I'm going to try and do over time, you know, people want to, in general, identify with what they do and who they are, so of course, I would love somebody who skis or rides a bike or runs to also wear a Ride Safe bracelet, but it's associated with horses. So for them, it's a good idea, but I don't really identify with that. So I'm going to develop branches where it would be ski safe or bike safe or run safe, you know, whatever it is, whatever you do, something that you can identify with. And I think I'm also certainly going to spend a lot more time on the fashion aspect as well, because I want people to, as they evolve as people and as they age and their tastes change, I want the bracelet to be able to change with them. So it's not something, well, I wore it for a couple years, it was cool, but I don't like this color anymore, I don't like this style anymore. I'm trying very hard to keep up with trends and fashion, so it's something that you always put on you, and it's just part of your wardrobe and your jewelry that you wear every day.
As we're talking about sports here, and although it applies to everyone outside sports, and really is regardless of age, because you may be, you know, a senior citizen who is driving on your own. I mean, it really can apply to absolutely anyone. So it is a valuable piece of jewelry, if you like, but essential equipment, essential information. And we're delighted to have you as part of the WIS team, because this is such a good fit for us, Stephanie, because, as you know, we cover all sports, and this would apply to everyone who listens or watches what we do here at WIS Sports. They can sign up for the newsletter on the website by going to wisports.com and get a chance to win one of your armbands, right? So there's an incentive there. There is a giveaway on offer for one of these armbands. Just go to the website wisports.com, and your website, of course, is Team Ride Safe. Stephanie, thank you very much indeed for coming on the program. We absolutely love having you on board as part of the WISP team. And we will continue to promote this wonderful medical armband. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jessika Kynett is a police officer in Livingston, Montana. And last year, while out trail riding, she sustained an injury that would not only threaten her career, but also her participation in the sport that she loves. After a challenging year of recovery, which included surgery, Jessika is not only back in the tack, but she's also heading to the U.S. Eventing Association's American Eventing Championships, which take place in Tryon, North Carolina next week. For Jessika, this is already a victory and something she regards as her Olympic Games. Jessika, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the story that you have is really quite interesting because you've made an amazing recovery. You are now on the verge of heading to Tryon in North Carolina for the USEA's American Eventing Championships. How does that feel right now at this point of the preparation?
Oh my goodness! Just you saying it out loud is a little bit overwhelming, and it's a dream come true, especially after the past year and a half.
Well, let's talk about that year and a half, because here you are heading to a major championship, and I'm sure a year ago you would not have begun to think that this was even possible, because you sustained a traumatic brain injury with a fall that could have been a lot worse had you not been wearing a helmet. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your background there, Jessika, as well, leading up to this, because you came originally from the Western world where helmets are not traditionally worn. It's usually a cowboy hat, and now that you're riding English, you are wearing a helmet. So talk a little bit about your background in horses and your riding experience up to that point.
Yes, ma'am. So I actually grew up in the Ozarks of Arkansas, and my mother used to train and break racehorses for the track, and I'm actually named after a horse, Jessie. It was her first horse. So I grew up riding Western, and I had a few years away from horses as a child, and then I got back into it as a preteen, and I started doing barrels, and then I switched to English because I wanted to jump. And then I began to jump my barrel horse, who ended up being an extraordinary eventer.
And why eventing?
Oh, when I first started off, I did what a lot of us gals do. We start in the hunter ring, and then I made my way up to jumpers, and I also fox hunted quite a bit. I made it to junior whip, and I fox hunted with the long green hounds outside of Memphis, Tennessee for a while, and I really enjoyed that excitement, just that feeling you get just running, just galloping across the field and jumping, and I thought I'm going to try eventing, and that's how I ended up getting into eventing, and I did that for several years.
And to what level then, just so we understand, your experience then prior to the accident, how advanced were you in your eventing career?
I got up to preliminary with my barrel horse.
Okay. So that day in June of 2016, you were just going out for a regular old hack, a trail ride with your dogs and your faithful horse, without a care in the world, I guess, just enjoying another hack.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what happened?
So I don't know exactly. I remember I actually did CrossFit that morning. I took my stepson to the doctor, and then I remember trailering my horse out to the trailhead. I remember saddling up. I remember the majority of the ride, but then the few minutes leading up to the fall, and of course the fall itself, I have no memory of. And we've come to realize that more than likely Tank tripped because it was an extremely rocky area. And he tripped, not realizing that it was a step down from a few rocks. And there was evidence in that area to suggest that that's exactly what had happened, because there was some soil that was disturbed a little bit. And so he fell. So we were just walking. So it's very similar to, if you remember Courtney King Dye from several years back, when she was when she was in an arena and she was on good footing, and, horses trip. That's what happens sometimes, even at a walk.
It happens and I'm sure it's happened to everyone who has been involved with horses and listening to this program, because it just happens so often. They just trip themselves, and more often than not, they catch themselves and they don't actually fall down. But when this happened, you obviously had a head injury because it was a traumatic brain injury, and you were laying there for a little while before you were found. And we should point out that the horse you were riding was a 9-year-old warm-blood cross gelding, and he is actually a police horse. So police horses are known for their sound mind and temperament, aren't they? So you probably didn't expect that he maybe was fooling around, bucking or playing around or doing anything skittish.
No, not at all, Chris, because just a few weeks prior, we were in Wyoming doing some police horse training. And of course, I don't remember laying there. I was there for probably about an hour by myself. I wasn't by myself because my dogs were with me, and of course, my horse, he stayed with me. And of course, if something had spooked him, why would he still be there? So I'm confident that he tripped that day.
And so you were obviously taken to hospital, and you were in an unconscious now for how long, Jess? I mean, do you remember any part of that when you came out of that coma, or a temporary coma, wasn't
it? No, ma'am, I don't remember anything. Apparently, because when it comes to head injuries, and I saw this as a police officer, the fight or flight symptom that goes with those, and I apparently went on the fight, which thankfully I don't remember, but my fellow officers were there and paramedics, and I fought with them, and they were able to, I guess, sneak up on me and give me some medicine to kind of calm down. And I was actually airlifted, and because they were under the impression that I had a skull fracture because the injury visibly looked that bad. And I was airlifted, and then I woke up about 2 days later in the hospital. And I still don't remember anything that led up to the accident or the accident itself.
And what was the extent of your injuries and the diagnosis then, and the prognosis at that time?
Initially, they thought that there was bleeding in the brain and that I had a contusion in my lung. But thankfully, neither of those turned out to be correct. I did have 2 black eyes. They were something to behold, more so on the right. And I know when I woke up, I remember my vision was a bit off. I also had an injury to my left, elbow area, and we still don't know what had caused that, probably from when I fell. But it's a miracle that I didn't break any bones, because he's a large animal. He's about 1,500 pounds, 17 hands. So he's a large horse.
And those injuries to your eye were to prove career-threatening too. Explain what happened and why they threatened your career and what you're doing now.
So it took a little bit of time after the trauma itself to figure out exactly what kind of injury I had sustained. We soon learned that it's something called fourth nerve palsy, which is damage to it's called the superior oblique muscle, and that's attached to the cranial nerve. So in turn, my cranial nerve had been damaged by the trauma itself, and I'm guessing that my helmet, and this goes out to everybody to make sure that your helmet fits properly, because there is a good possibility that my helmet was not as snug as it could have been. And so when I fell, it lifted up just a tad, and when I did strike the ground, it hit just above my, my brow there. And so that's what caused the injury, was the trauma from hitting the ground. And as far as me having to resign from the police department, it's kind of pertinent to have good vision as a police officer for obvious reasons. And I went back to work light duty, and I probably went back too soon, but I wanted to get back out there. And unfortunately, the moment that I ended up going back light duty, the clock was ticking, and they have a light duty policy that you can only be on light duty for so long. And a lot of companies have this. And unfortunately, in the States, we have something called the Family Medical Leave Act, but it's 6 months. However, it's 6 months of unpaid leave, which I couldn't afford at the time. And I could have my vision corrected, but they could not operate until 6 months after trauma. So what I'm getting to is that I didn't have the time to stick around before it was a possibility that they could terminate me. So
where does that leave you now?
Well, I had surgery a few months ago, so my vision, thankfully, I can see normal, because for about 8 months I saw partial double vision, which was quite an experience, a very humbling one, because I think that all of us, we take our health for granted, most especially our vision. But I have been given the green light to get back into law enforcement by my surgeon. So, and it sounds like there's an opportunity for Tank and me here soon to be back on the street as police officers.
Well, that would be absolutely fabulous. Now, we should point out that you started the mounted unit over there in Livingston, Montana. Tell us about how that came about, because I know in some police departments they've had to cut back their resources, and one of the things that's been subjected to budget cuts is the mounted unit.
Yes, ma'am, which is unfortunate because mounted police is an extraordinary utility for law enforcement and being able to be engaged in the community. And because like what we often say is, as police officers, nobody wants to come up to my car and pet my car, but they'll come up to my horse and pet my horse. And right then and there, you've already established such a rapport with the public. I was actually looking for my next eventer back in 2013, and I ended up finding a horse that I thought would be suitable for police work instead of eventing, and went to my police chief, and I proposed the idea. However, the terms were that I would be financially responsible for it. And to me, that was something that I could do. It was a dream of mine to be able to mix both passions, law enforcement as well as horses, and it would benefit the community. So I ended up starting the unit back it was early 2014 that I actually started it. So,
well, the perfect fit then, the perfect career for you.
Yes, ma'am.
And where is that now in terms of its development and growth? I mean, how many officers do you have on that unit? And is this future secure, or is it entirely dependent on you?
Well, no, since I've resigned from the department, it's my understanding that the unit has been dissolved. And at the time, it was just me. It was just me on the unit. You
and your horse patrolling the streets
ma'am.
By horseback. Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's talk about the eventing career then, as you've only got now a few days left before you head out to Tryon in North Carolina for those championships. How long have you been able to ride this year with surgery, and obviously with having that double vision? It must have affected your riding as well. How did that fit in with your preparations for the championships? How often were you able to ride?
I was a bit ignorant when it came to head trauma before this happened to me. I didn't realize how much physically head injuries will affect you. I mean, not just for obvious reasons, but how it exhausts you because your brain is healing. And unfortunately, it took about 6 months for me to ride longer than about an hour. It was something that it was a gradual increase. I'd go from 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and it was all flat work because it just wasn't safe for me to jump. And of course, Tank at the time, he was so new to jumping. That's the last thing I want to do. And then I was able to have my surgery back in late February. And then that's when I started to do some jumping. So most of that time it was spent just doing flat work. And I did notice that, there were times that my body, I was trying to compensate just from the vision, that I would drop my shoulder when it came to 20 meters, and so that has been actually hard to correct, because your body gets so used to doing something. So I've been having to be very careful with my equitation, because I rode with that distorted vision for so long.
I can well imagine. And in terms of the competitions leading up to the championships, what have you done with him?
Just about everything. We've only done 3 competitions, and I'm still amazed that we qualified. I initially just started competing him for fun, and he ended up excelling at it. He's such a ham. He really is. He's a big, goofy horse, and he's one of those horses that is beyond generous. Because I'll never forget when I got back on him, he after my accident, he just knew. He just seemed to know. And then, like nowadays, he knows that it's a day to school cross-country jumps, and he's a completely different horse. He just knows. So we do a lot of conditioning sets. We do our galloping sets. We don't jump very often. I'm a firm believer in saving your horse. They've only got so many jumps in them. And with him being a larger animal, he's not your typical eventer. He's built very differently, and we still don't know exactly what he's crossed with, because when I purchased him a few years ago, we were under the assumption that he was a draft cross, and then we did a DNA test on him, and he's not draft at all.
Tell us the story of how you found him.
I found him on Facebook, Chris. I was looking for my next police horse because my other guy, it probably wasn't the best job for him, and I ended up finding him on a Facebook group ad, and he had been used as a hunting horse. So he would be used to bring the game back from the mountain.
How big is he?
He is 17 hands, and he's 1,500 pounds.
Wow. And may I ask how tall you are, Jessika?
Yes, ma'am. I'm 5'8".
Okay, so he's not too terribly big for you then.
No.
I mean, that would be a good fit, I'd imagine.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about the last few days then of your preparation for the AE season, when you'll be leaving. What will you do with him between now and then?
Well, the past week, we've been just keeping a pretty low key training. Yesterday, we did our last schooling over cross country jumps over in Billings. That's the closest cross country course, which is about 2 hours away from us. And today, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to do some basic flat work with him, and he might actually have the next few days off before we trailer, because he's never actually, to my knowledge, he's never gone on this extensive trailering trip before.
This is a big adventure then for you and Tankers.
Yes, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, let me hear a little bit about your reaction now to riding after what happened completely out of the blue, Jessika. No one expected this. It was just a casual trail ride, and then that happened. It's one of those times in life, isn't it, when you count your blessings and you realize, my goodness, that was very serious, but it could have been worse. What have you taken away from that, apart from those awful, awful injuries, but psychologically, how has it affected you?
It's been a humbling experience. I know that I've said that word before, but it truly has been, and I'm grateful for every single day. I know before, I think a lot of us are that way. We take things for granted, little things, and I think that, like a lot of us, we think we're invisible and that nothing can touch us. And that's not true. I mean, I can think of all the crazy stuff that I have done on horseback, especially as a child. And yet this happens to me at a walk. And so it can happen. I'm grateful that I had my helmet on, because if I hadn't, you and I may not be talking. And it could have gone so much differently. I could be paralyzed. There's the list goes on and on. And so I'm grateful for each and every day that I'm here. That's about
right.
That's about what. Yeah, it's just grateful, and then for just the community that I used to police. The community has been unbelievably supportive. All the love and support from strangers, from people that I've arrested. I mean, people are they're phenomenal. I mean, being a police officer, you see a lot of negative, and to see this kind of kindness, it's wonderful.
And that's interesting that even from people that have been on the other side of the law to you, that you've had to arrest.
Oh, yes.
They've been impacted by the severity of this accident and obviously what it's done to you. Give us some examples of because that's, I think, an interesting side of human nature, isn't it? That they would come around despite their situation in life and how they got on the wrong side of the law for whatever reason. And yet that human connection, when it came to it, they were supportive of you in such an awful time.
Well, I think, we're all in this together. And, as a police officer, it wasn't my job to judge. It was my job to enforce the law. And I treated people like they would want to be treated. Like I would want to be treated. And I was kind, probably so kind to the dismay of some of my coworkers at times, but, still being safe. But I have that Anne Frank mentality that, everybody is truly good at heart. We just, as humans, we all make poor decisions. All of us do it at times. But, no, I think we're all in this together. And the folks that have come up to me, I mean, even some that I've had some, nasty encounters with, they would come up to me. I've had a few hugs from some of these folks and saying, hey, been thinking of you. I hope you're doing okay. And that still just fills my heart with joy, because it's true. We are all in this together. And, and I hope to continue to pay that kindness forward.
That's a wonderful story, Jessika. And here you are now going out doing what you love, recovered enough to be competing at this level. And I think, as you said somewhere, that you may not be going to these championships riding in the advanced level, but it's an Olympic Games for you. Yes, ma'am. So what does it mean to you to actually compete then when you get there? What sort of support will you have? Will you have your husband there? Talk a little bit about, how you're preparing and who's going to be on your cheerleading team when you get there.
Well, I'm going to have quite a lot of cheerleaders, but unfortunately most of them will not be there. And no, my husband will not be able to make it. That's quite a long time for him to get off of work. And so he's going to stay here in Montana, and he's going to take care of our animals that we have here. I have several dogs and cats, and so he's going to take care of the flock that we have here. However, I am going through Kentucky on my way to Tryon, and I'm going to pick up an old horsey friend of mine. We used to jump together back in the 90s, and so I'm going to pick her up, and she's going to help me while I'm there, and I'm very grateful for her. So she's going to help me while I'm there, and then on the way back, I'm going to drop her back off in Kentucky. So it's just going to be me, Tank, and Jamie.
Oh, you're going to say, you have to give a shout out to your friend. What's her name?
Yeah, Jamie Denton, and she actually just got out of the United States Air Force as a pilot. So she's quite a gal.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like quite a team you've got there, and I think it's going to be an adventure of a lifetime, don't you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I do.
Wonderful. Well, once you get back on the streets, I'm sure Tank is going to really show the community, how versatile he is. One day he can go eventing and the next day he can go out and police the community. He's probably a rock star in the community already, is he?
He is, and like I said, he is a ham, but poor guy is probably not going to know what his job is from day to day. He's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to jump these people, or am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do?
Well, I'm bound to ask you, with that experience, Jessika, and the career that you've had, what advice would you give to young girls listening to this program when they're getting tacked up to go out on a trail ride?
Well, first of all, make sure you wear your helmet, but something that I also would do, especially if you're going out by yourself, is make sure somebody knows where you're at. And that day, thankfully, my husband, he did know where I was. And, we kept a nice time frame as to, hey, I'm leaving at this time. I should be back at this time. Even though I know a lot of folks don't suggest doing even riding by yourself. But in rural Montana, if, there are many, many times, almost actually all the time, that unless I rode by myself, I wouldn't be to ride at all. That's just the nature of a lot of us, I believe, but especially in rural Montana. But yeah, make sure somebody knows where you're going, and also wear that helmet. Always wear that helmet, because that helmet is the reason I'm here. It was an Ovation helmet, and I'm grateful for it.
Wonderful. Well, we're very grateful to Jessika, and I want to wish you the very best of luck next week at those championships. Have a wonderful time. The best of luck to both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on the program.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
And we'll be following Jessika during the American Eventing Championships next week and keep you posted on our social media channels. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Wisp Sports. If you would like to contribute to the program, have any comments or questions, you can email us at info@wispsports.com. If you listen to the show on the website at wispsports.com, don't forget to check out all the other podcasts that we produce here. We have over 700 episodes now across 25 unique shows, and we reach over 1.3 million listeners worldwide. And you can, of course, take us anywhere you go by downloading the podcast from the iTunes podcast store. And the best thing about that is it's free. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with another episode of The Horse Show. But for now, our thanks again to Team Ride Safe, our title sponsor here this week on The Horse Show. You can find out more about this medical armband by going to the website where you can place your order at teamridesafe.com. Until the next time, thank you for listening.